So, this is Northwest Prepper again. I got me a fresh cup of coffee. So, I'm going to make another comment here. Now, President Trump is talking about moving U.S. troops to Eastern Europe. Now, a lot of Germans are upset because it's going to affect the economy directly. When I was stationed in Germany, I was there when some bases shut down, and it absolutely destroyed the local economy. A lot of people in Europe, Germany mostly, they don't want to say how much the Americans contribute to the economy, but they contribute a lot between housing, rent, food, schools, gas, local restaurants, whatever. But they spend a lot of money, pubs, all the young guys chasing girls. Even a red light district makes their money. Now, the reason why I want to go into this is because as Europe slowly progresses towards war, and the war machine in Europe winds up, Eastern Europe has been affected by the wars, but generally run through relatively fast. And I got a suspicion that that Putin will make an agreement, and the Chinese, Putin and Trump will all make an agreement to not destroy each other's assets and locations. Now, I can't say why I think this, but it just seems to make sense. And this agreement in itself isn't saying that there will not be a war. It's just saying that, for example, the Russians will not bomb U.S. facilities. The Chinese will not bomb Russian facilities in case there's like a full-scale war, you know. But that doesn't mean the European Union still won't push war through Ukraine. So, one of the big reasons going to Eastern Europe is the fact that it's cheaper. Okay, with the euro rate like it is, I can tell you I'm very sure that there are areas in Germany where soldiers have been mugged and beaten by migrants. I remember that specifically before. That was before the heavy migrant crisis in Germany. It was dangerous in certain parts of Frankfurt and other places where, you couldn't go unless you were Arabic or Turkish or whatever. I'm not saying Turkish primarily, but we'll say Arabic in general. You knew that if you were in a pub, you would have certain minorities that disliked Americans because they had, steady paying jobs and they didn't have jobs. So there's a lot of people in Germany that really don't like Americans. So moving to Eastern Europe, there are plenty of Russian facilities that could be retrofitted to work for Americans. And there are many companies that would easily set up internet services and everything else. Like back in the Cold War we used to live in, I was in Heilbronn, Germany, with 237th Engineer Battalion, a long time ago. And we were in barracks where the Germans had lived in and trained in World War II. You could still see the outlines in the wall where they had the racks for their rifles. We used the same bathrooms, we had the same rooms, new doors, new floors, whatever. Windows probably the same, just new glass. But relatively pretty much everything was the same as the Germans. Now, why I'm saying this is because Eastern Europe was occupied by Russia for a long time during the Cold War. There are a lot of facilities available that are designed for military personnel. Now, it would not be hard to find airfields that could be upgraded, buildings that could be fixed relatively fast. I'm not saying they would rip the walls apart, but I'm saying if they were in a rush, military is famous for this, they could run hardwire and they could just cover it with like hard plastic like you see in the States. But it's possible. Okay? I've seen that with some of the trailers in Iraq where you have the trailer wall and all your wiring is run. You have like this little L-shaped piece of plastic covering it and it goes to your plugins. Now, I want to bring this up because soldiers generally can live in more or less hospitable environments. You know, as long as they got decent heat, washer and dryer, or laundry services, decent food, you know, a place to blow off some steam once in a while. Generally, most of them don't care. But the biggest aspect is this, okay? Russia generally doesn't want to go into Eastern Europe starting wars. Eastern Europe is very familiar with the Russians. They have no love for the Russians. Since the wall fell, the Germans have essentially forgotten what the people from Eastern Europe, Eastern Germany have said about the occupation, right? In the ex-DDR. So, they don't have a reminder of when they used to have the Pershing II nuclear missile sites in Germany. And the protests and this and that. This is way back in the 80s and all kinds of stuff. I'm aging myself now. But essentially they've forgotten what it takes to be ready and aware of national defense against Russia. So, if there is a full-scale World War III, and Germany is in there, which I guarantee they will be in the fight, U.S. troops and equipment are actually safer in Eastern Europe because there's less likely going to be a major attack on there. And like I said, there's probably be an agreement between Russia and the U.S. in some way not to go after each other. Because, you know, let's be real, President Trump and no one in the U.S. wants to be in a foreign war in Europe. I mean, hell, most of the British people don't want to fight for a government they don't even support that hates them. I mean, good luck on finding soldiers to fight the war. Most of the Russian soldiers don't want to fight it. Most of the Ukrainian soldiers don't want to fight it. But once you're there, fuck it, you're there. You're going to do what you got to do. But, I mean, so that's one of the main reasons, in my opinion. Cost, location, availability of facilities, and the fact that you're moving is not a major move. Of course, what the U.S. military would most likely do, they would send families with dependents back to the U.S. They would, for example, say a guy's family is from Idaho. They would send the wife and kids back to Idaho. They would ship the unit to whatever facility. They would set up, get things upgraded, have contractors come in, local contractors, right? Until they had facilities set up for families. And then they would rotate people in and they would do 2-year tours. I mean, instead of an extended 3-year tour. Right? And that's all they would do. They would just simply limit it to 2 years. So, guy's been there 14 months, you know, he's married. He might push 3 years, might not, depending on regs. But there's a good chance he'd probably just end up doing 24 months and get orders cut to go home back to States. And then they're shipping more people for 24-month deployments. Now, the reason why I say this is because of paperwork. It's easier to just classify everyone as 24 months and transfer people in and move people around like that. But what this does also is this removes all the family dependents from the picture too. So therefore, what happens is the military army, the U.S. Army, is more ready for combat operations because now they don't have to worry about dependents. It's like the old Cold War. Most of the people that went to Germany were not family members, majority. Most of them were single soldiers that only did 24-month tours in Germany before the wall fell. And the reason for that was because 24 months in Germany, you go back to the States, you know, or you could extend if you chose to, or whatever you did paperwork-wise, if it was accepted. Or if you did a trade for someone who didn't want to come to Germany in the same position, MOS, and level you were in the schematic of things. Now, when the U.S. is in Eastern Europe, when the Army leaves, the Air Force will leave. Because the Air Force depends on several things from the Army. My deployments I've seen, for example, they depend on the U.S. Army supply system. The Navy did the same thing. The Army supply system, became the Navy supply system, and also became the Air Force supply system because it was the only supply system that was there. Now, the second thing is if you also have these Russian facilities, you also have hard bunkers. In Europe, most aviation assets don't have hard bunkers, which is simply the old military World War II giant metal doors and stuff, but they're not really bomb-proof. Now, with the occupation of Eastern Europe, the Russians, under the communists, built massive numbers of heavily fortified and defendable and protectable facilities from bombing. Now, with that move, for example, the Air Force most likely would have access to these facilities. And with some work, they even have, I heard rumor, I talked to some Polish people when I was there, they said that there were some facilities in Poland, for example, that the hydraulics still worked, and there were different levels where they kept aircraft. So we don't even know how well defined this stuff is, but the point is, there are facilities enough there where the Air Force could get most, and the Army could get most of their aircraft into a hangar made of cement. Generally, these hangars, when you go in, right, they have offices to the right and to the left if you're facing out, and they originally were designed for jets, where the jet would go out the back and it would kind of go up, kind of like this, like out and up and out to the back of the building, right? So that way, if the jet's going to take off, all that force on the engine is going to be going back. So, Eastern Europe makes sense for President Trump to move troops to. Like I said, clears out all the dependents, gets them home, reduces it to 24 months, makes more of a hardship tour like Korea almost, and it also prepares the American military for an actual upfront conflict, because when you're on a 24-month deployment, we'll call it deployment to Eastern Europe, you are probably going to spend more time in the field training because you don't have your family there. You don't have anything else to do. You will probably spend more time doing weapons maintenance. You will spend some more time doing like your basic soldiering skills. And then another aspect is this. Let's say they sent American soldiers to Hungary, right? Just Romania. Most soldiers don't speak Romanian or Hungarian, right? That means they're not going to go out as much and mix as much. That doesn't mean you'll have problems with locals, but because you always do. But that just means that it's not like the people where the Germans, for example, so they speak relatively good English, most of them, and a lot of soldiers speak some German, or they have wives that were German, or whatever, girlfriends that were German, and they spoke English well. So you're going to have a lesser opportunity for soldiers to intermingle to a lot of points with locals. I'm not saying locals won't intermingle with them. I'm just saying that more field time, language barriers, all the other stuff like that. It's definitely going to have an effect and make it less difficult for the military to deal with stuff. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to end the video. And this is my opinion on why Eastern Europe is a better location for U.S. troops, if not basically pulling all American troops out and equipment. So, have a good one.